All right. Well, welcome, 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 welcome. It is 7 p.m. It's somewhere earlier on your time, Jason, somewhere where you hate it. But we are officially live. This is episode 6 of Brandon Robertson Soul Hour. I want to take time to first thank all of my previous guests who have been on the show. I believe that it's starting to pick up some momentum, and I appreciate the viewers who have been checking in and have been tuning in. I really appreciate you all spending your evening with me to chat with some wonderful people, wonderful musicians, and professionals in their respective fields. So let's get right into it. So today, June 23rd, I have a special guest. This see, don't I'm gonna hype you up. I'm gonna give you your 2 cents. I'm gonna give you your credit, man, where credit's due. This brother is no stranger in the jazz community. He's been on the scene for a while. I'm not saying he's an old man. He's just, he's done a few things. He has a couple of acolytes under his belt that, you know, we are all trying to accomplish ourselves. He is he's a jazz saxophonist, um, director of Roots Jazz American Music at San Francisco Conservatory Music. He is a Houston native. H Town, what's happening? What's happening? You know, is that how y'all do it? Do y'all? Is it the other way?
I have no idea. No, I've never done that before in my life. No.
Um, this gentleman has touched he has touched the stage with the likes of Randy Brecker, the incredible bonus Michael Dees, Tim Warfield, which is he's awesome. He's killing, by the way. He came down to our area a while back. Martin Bejarano, who is a phenomenal pianist and also Florida State holding it down. Tito Puentes Jr. at college, he has the Latin side already attached to his belt as well. And we're gonna get into some of the projects that he's already accomplished, things that he's doing right now, what's it been like over there in the Cali side. So I'm gonna pass the mic over to my guest. Everybody, welcome Mr. Jason Hainsworth. Hey,
What's going on, sir? How's it going?
I'm doing well, man. I'm very excited to have you on the show. You know, you and I had a chance to finally play together early this year. That was a whole lot of fun. And now we share a faculty role together with the Brubeck, Jazz Summit. So even though we had to take a little hiatus for a second due to the whole COVID stuff, but we're gonna be back. We'll be back.
We will be back. Yep, and we'll be back hopefully uh, with more chops and better musicianship skills to to impart to the students.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man. So how you holding up, man? What's life been like for you since we have been quarantined?
Probably like it's been for everybody, trying to be as responsible and non-dumb as possible
Right.
by staying around our home and hanging out with the wife and just doing our part to not spread something and you know still keep engaged with the community and trying to stay active with not only our students but the community as well. So
Right.
just holding on and trying to keep our sanity while this stuff is everything, not just COVID, but everything is taking place.
And so over in Cali, are you guys still locked down or what's is it have y'all slowly starting to open up or is it still
It's slowly starting to open back up, but and I live, right in the heart of the city, so I would say most things are still pretty much closed down,
hmm,
and there's still, very little people walking on the streets. This picked up in the past couple of weeks, but it's still pretty much closed down, which I'm not going to even complain about, because I think that's the right thing to do until everything passes as best as it can.
Right, right, right. I'm curious. I was thinking about this because you're up in the San Fran area, and we went there recently, or when I say recently, I would say within the last 2 or 3 years. I got to travel over there with the basketball team for the NCAA tournament. Our women's made it to the first and second round. So I remember, and this is my question to you, man. Have you ever visited the Painted Ladies homes? Where the full house.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 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 You have to do that.
Is that like is that a tourist thing? Do locals do that? Like, is it like, it's kind of like if you ask somebody from Miami, hey, how often do you go to South Beach? It's there.
I would say it's kind of like that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still something that, I mean, even because there's a park right across the street from those
Right.
houses. So, I mean, it's a beautiful park, and it's also a good location to see just from an angle all of downtown also. So I can't remember the last time we were there. Was it maybe a year or maybe a year and a half ago? But yeah, it's still some place that we go and check out from time to time.
Word, word. And what is there to do in San Francisco? Like, what does a professional musician do on their off time for fun in San Francisco? And you from one of the biggest states in the United States, so like in comparison to Texas, I mean, what do you do? What does Jason Hainsworth do?
Uh, I wish I had something more exciting to to give you as an answer. What do I do for fun? The short answer would be I do whatever my wife tells me to do for fun.
Facts.
Um, but also, regular stuff. I like watching sports. Uh, I like playing video games. I am trying to practice more.
Huh.
So all those things, and also I try to make a point to go and support my students as they are kind of making names for themselves and are out around town playing at various gigs. And then I also have, friends and colleagues that live in the area that perform quite a bit as well. So I try to go out and check them out as much as I can. And also just, hear not necessarily my colleagues or my students, but I want to hear people that I haven't heard play before also. So there's plenty of, venues to hear live music. And that's a very cool part of living in San Francisco or in the Bay Area in general, is that there's a lot of places where you can hear um, live music, and that was something that was not a Houston thing to me anyway. So yeah, so that's kind of what I do.
Okay, so to go off of that, right? You said, my wife, whatever she tells me to do, wherever I go, I walk, I follow, right? So I'm kind of curious, since you a Houston native, right? I recently went to Texas City, Texas. You know where that is?
No.
City, Texas.
I mean, I may have been there. I kind of know where it is, but I don't recall what it
I
felt like.
I always assume that anybody from Texas, y'all are close. But then my wife has family over there, and I got a bunch of friends over there, and they always tell me like, bro, it'll take you 2.5 days to probably drive through the state of Texas, like because it's so big. You-
Right.
And well, I went there back in February. I was doing some clinics out there, and I believe that's Galveston County. I think that's what it was.
Galveston County.
Believe so. Maybe I could be.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
But I remember I saw a Jack in the Box. Now, bro, I'm from Florida, right? I kept seeing all these Jack in the Boxes. All as soon as I pulled into Houston's airport, right? I'm like, man, what is this Jack in the Box? And I ain't never heard of it. And the Uber driver's like, what you mean you ain't never heard of Jack in the Box? For real? You never heard of a Jack in the Box? I'm like, listen, we just got a Bojangles in Florida a couple of years ago. So I had never heard of a Jack in the Box. So she goes, oh, okay. Let me take you to a Jack in the Box. So this Uber driver, she drives me to my hotel, and there's a Jack in the Box right across the street from the hotel, right? And so I'm like, okay, let me get the little mini taco box, and it's like all these little mini tacos, right? And then the lady got me two of them, and these things are packed. It's like 16 of these little tacos packed in this box. I'm like, ma'am, I don't need all these tacos. She's like, trust me, you're going to go through them in about 5 minutes. I eat one, boom, bust it down, boom, another one. 5 minutes, that box is gone. I said, dang, she was right. Now, the reason I'm asking you about Jack in the Box because you guys have a famous burger joint in San Francisco that anybody that visits the state of California and you go to any of these areas that has an In-N-Out burger. I need to hear from you since you have lived in Florida, you have lived in New York, you have lived in Texas, and now you in California. Please tell me your experiences with In-N-Out. I have to know. I just need to, in comparison to a Jack in the Box, if you've ever had that.
Well, I am biased because I love Jack in the Box. It was one of the actually uh, happier moments that I found out that Jack in the Box existed out here. So, because like you said, it doesn't exist in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
In and out is cool. You know, it's a hamburger spot. They have okay stuff. Yeah, I mean, but it's still fast food. So,
That's
um,
that's so funny, man. That I've heard like every time I've asked somebody about In-N-Out, they're like, it's the best burger place in the world. Man, when you go to like when I went to San Francisco, all my friends like, man, you gotta go to In-N-Out Burger. And then I get there, and then they got this secret menu that I discovered after the fact. So I was a little upset about that because I was like, well, dang, I ain't know nothing, no, no secret menu, right? But then I'm like, man, this food is just as greasy as the McDonald's that's around the corner from my house in Florida. I'm just curious, when you move to different states, they have these different restaurants that people hype up. And then once you get there, and you've lived there for a while now, so I'm pretty sure it's like, okay.
right. It's okay. I don't make a point to go to In-N-Out Burger. Like it's not. I'm not craving it.
Right. It's kind of like when you say for okay, so us Floridians, we all know about Whataburger. Now, to all of my Florida peoples that's listening right now, if you gets down with Whataburger, I'm gonna need you to triple tap that like button on here because if I had to compare Whataburger to In-N-Out burgers, ah, it's a toughie. Maybe I'm being biased because I'm from Florida and that's what we used to, right? But I'm just kind of curious, when you travel to different places, like you've toured around the country and you've toured internationally, and you get to try different foods, and you'll meet somebody, while you're on the road. If you're internationally, for instance, you'll meet somebody from the States, and then y'all start talking about different foods and all of the different, cultural differences within food contexts. Like I went to Norway, right, back in 2010, right? I got to play in Norway, and they have a McDonald's there. That McDonald's in Norway tastes nothing like the McDonald's that it was like whatever they meat, whatever birds they use was like, oh, this is insane, Um, so yeah, man, I was just curious about that, man. But I do want to ask you some stuff. So tell me about your time playing with Ed Kale and Tito.
Oh, Ed Kaya, yeah.
Oh my God,
Um,
names.
Man, well, first of all, Ed is a phenomenal saxophone player, so I really enjoy playing with him. And he's a um, great writer and arranger too. So I was fortunate to play in his big band, Mambo Blue, for maybe a couple of years, and we did a lot of gigs together in that band, and the band was killing. And I learned a lot, just kind of playing in that band. And he was gracious enough to allow me to solo quite a bit in that band too, that I was appreciative of. Um, it was just a fun band, and we were able to play quite consistently over that 2 year span. One of the reasons why I um, enjoyed playing in that band, and I didn't even care what parts I played, was just to look at the charts and to see how rhythmically he wrote out certain ideas or certain phrases, because it's one thing to hear it on an album, but then it's another thing to see exactly how it was like created.
Right.
And yeah, it was a fun band, and man, he's a monster saxophone player as well. So that was a lot of fun, and I keep thinking about the band, especially the rhythm section cats in there. They were always like super talented guys. So it was fun. It was a fun band to be a part of.
Who was the rhythm section, if I can ask, if you remember?
Oh man, you gotta make me. I want to say it was. Is it Jim Gazier was the piano player who teaches at New World School in Miami,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the drummer was Jack Ciano, who's a great drummer down in South Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and Nikki Orta on electric bass, who's just a phenomenal electric bass player. Yeah, so that was the powerhouse rhythm section.
Yeah. So just to go off of that, man, you spent a lot of time in Southwest Florida. You were teaching at Broward College for many, many years, and a lot of students that came under your leadership. How did you enjoy your time when you were in Florida before you left to go to the West Coast? Like what was some of the things that you was able to take with you over to California?
Well, the thing about my opportunity to teach there was I got that job when I was in my head anyway, still really um, young. I was basically hired a year removed from grad school. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I was 29 or 28 when I got that job.
Mm.
Um, and I was very appreciative of the opportunity that they gave me to take over that program. And it was something that I uh, cherished because it was kind of learning on the spot stuff. It's always one thing to uh, understand information and how to teach a class or how to run ensemble rehearsal when you're in college, right? Like if you're taking classes in grad school, or if you have the opportunity to teach like an improv class as a grad assistant or something like that. But it's an entirely different thing when like you're in charge of like all the stuff.
I'm
So
with you.
I'm sure you're finding that stuff out right now. So
Mhm.
a lot of it was figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and not being afraid to change stuff that doesn't work on the fly, so that the students continue to grow. And also, it being a community college, you had a bunch of different students from different backgrounds, different countries even. Like you have a large Caribbean contingent of students, and then you also have people that maybe not necessarily wanting to be a professional musician, but they still want to, perform and just, be active in their community. Which the longer I got there, the more and more I really appreciated those cats because they're doing it just because of the love of playing the instrument and also the hang, right?
I get it.
And we kind of lose sight of that sometimes. So yeah, and I guess I was there for, and I keep forgetting, like I mentioned to you earlier, somewhere between 13 and 15 years. But I was happy to spend that time, and we were able to really accomplish a lot of stuff over time. Developed a really strong jazz faculty department, some really killer musicians that taught there, and because of that and because of the teachers that were there, who were all, I tried to make a point that all of those folks were uh, great educators, but they also played and still play all around South Florida, Palm Beach, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, so that their students could go out and see those people play,
Right.
and even sit in with those people, you know, when they felt, like their chops were to the point where they could hang at least on a tune or two. So I was very proud of that, and because of that, like our students were starting to get, and I mean they eventually rose to a level in which they could hold their own, and they're out there doing their own gigs now, and playing in different groups, not only in South Florida, but like we have various students that play kind of internationally now. So I'm very proud of those guys, and they all still keep in touch with me as much as they can, and that's a very cool thing.
I appreciate you saying that because, one thing I try to tell my students here over here at FGC, I try to tell them like some of the best experience I had in college was the hang at the sessions. Like when you know about the hang when you was up there in Tally, man, like the hang is real. Like that's a real thing. That's how you really ground yourself. That's how you connect with the folks that you're being centered around, and you know the professors that allowed me to come and sit in. I remember on multiple occasions, Leon would ask me to come up and play, and the faculty wasn't out there all the time like that at the sessions, but when they did step in, they would usually only play with the students. They wouldn't necessarily play with each other because they can do that anytime, whenever. But I got so much experiences, through playing with Leon, playing with, Bill Peterson, when, Bill Kennedy was there teaching. And man, and when Paul McKee was there, I mean, I have stories, of just knowledge that they have shared with me, man. So actually it gets me to my question that I wanted to ask you, since, and not to switch gears or go completely left with the conversation, but it just made me think about what you mentioned about the hang. Um, us being jazz musicians, we play music that is, I won't I won't say it's oppressed music, but it's an oppression that the culture has felt throughout history, from the beginning of the 20th century to even current times right now. And jazz music is performed by a lot of multitude of cultures. It's not just performed by African Americans, at least in America. Everybody now has partaken or participates into this music and this genre. So I wanted to ask, what is your perception or perspective of how this music is being presented in higher education, and do you feel that African American history should be included in the discussion when presenting the jazz literature in our classrooms? Because they kind of go hand in hand when you think about the entertainment aspect of things. When you look at it from that perspective, I mean, blacks and whites over time throughout history have always integrated. It's just that with society was trying to not create this bridge of communion, jazz music seems to always break through that. So I'm just curious about your take on that.
Okay. That was I don't even know where to start. I will say a couple of things, and I hope that I answer some of the questions that you hit me with. Um, yes, we could all do a much better job in uh, showing to our students uh, how impactful this music has been on not only uh, other musicians, but how impactful this music has become or helped to shape, um, the entire country and all of, um, in my head, all of the harmony and the rhythms that we listen to on any type of platform today
Right.
has some root in the music that we call jazz music. And whether or not those other forms of or styles of music acknowledge it, doesn't mean that it's not true.
Right.
So,
Right.
um, it's funny. We could always do a better job. I would like to think that because of the times that we're living in right now, with the protests just taking place on a daily um, basis in this country and actually all around the world,
Mhm.
that now is a time for change to be had across, not just in terms of making sure that our government um, treats our people equally,
Mhm.
but that there's an acknowledgement of uh, some of the wrongs that have been kind of universally placed on every walk of life that exists in this country, and again all around the world. And jazz music and jazz education and music education in general um, is no different than that. And you can only uh, do so much until the floodgates will come open with like the truth. And to me, one of these moments is right now. And whereas just coming from a musician's perspective, and hopefully this answers another part of your question, when everyone on CNN or whatever news outlet you're looking at, when people are protesting about injustices in whatever field they're in, whether it's in renaming high schools or renaming, other kind of um, artifacts or buildings that were named after Confederate soldiers. Um, I, the first thing I think about is, well, where are the Black jazz educators that are teaching at major colleges and universities?
Right.
That's immediately where my head goes. And then I think about, well, um, where are these Black jazz students attending school? Because I was a Black music student at one point, as you were,
Mhm.
and I'm sure at some point in your collegiate experience, you were like the only Black dude in your class. I could almost bet multiple classes. So my question always is, well, where are these people going? Because or are they getting turned off by their experience because they aren't seeing Black jazz educators or Black music educators and say, I'm out, which I could totally understand. So that's just one kind of thing that I notice. Another thing that I notice is I look at any jazz publication and I don't see Black jazz musicians, or I don't see Black jazz editors, or
Mhm.
I don't see Black jazz writers. So what's going on there? Right. So there's always a a a level of this stuff that comes into play. Now, that's not to to say that there aren't people like those people that exist. It's just the sheer fact that they aren't obviously getting the same type of treatment or opportunities to write in these publications as these other people. Or, you know, you have an advanced degree. I have an advanced degree. I can't guess how many people of color graduate with masters and or doctorates every year, but I can just from firsthand experience attest to how hard it is to get your foot in the door to be on faculty full-time or part-time for that matter at any of these universities studying music, jazz in particular. And we could do a wide-ranging scan of every, you know, major college and university in this country and just pinpoint like their jazz programs and see what is the ratio of either female to male in a jazz program or white to non-white educator in a jazz program. And it would be a startling find, you know, maybe not startling because you can see it. I mean, and that's the state that we're living in, and that's something that needs to be addressed. Fortunately, I think there's people that are starting to address some of those things. I'm actually on the African American Jazz Congress. I always get those mixed up.
Mhm.
That is a kind of a group that is aligned with the Gen Conference.
Right.
And we had a meeting about some of these things last week with Dr. Trinice Robinson. So these aren't like new things. These are things that have been going on for decades. But fortunately, now some of these issues are starting to come more to light, and hopefully there can be some hope to resolve some of these injustices in you know, in the upcoming years.
Okay. Yeah, that pretty much did answer the question. That's what.
Boom.
And you know, you know, Jason, before we get into the music to the records, the only reason I asked that question is because a lot of people that know me down here in the Southwest Florida, they know how equal I am. People, the musicians that have worked with me, I treat everybody the same. You know, I'm professional. I show up on time to the gigs. You know, I'm always courteous with my music brothers and sisters. I make sure that I make the audience always feel welcome whenever I put on the show. That there's no separation of me as the jazz musician or black musician, whatever. I keep all that separate because music has no color line to it. You know, that's
Well,
why.
Brandon, let me stop you right there because and I hear what you're saying, but uh, in a certain sense, this has nothing to do with you. You know what I'm saying? Like this is something that uh, you or I have no control over, right? Like in other words, it's not our fault that someone else and their prejudice or their, you know, institutionalized racism is not looking at you or I and saying, let's give this highly educated young man an opportunity to do something because he's qualified and he's talented and he's obviously have had experience. That's nothing on you. That's on them. Like, in other words, they need to change. You don't. So, so that yeah, that information has more to do with how open are their ears and their eyes going to be, and hopefully, being musicians,
Mhm.
which musicians are typically, not always, but typically um, more open-minded than the average person. Uh, they can see like finally what has been going on, and it's up to them to change. For us, we just need to keep doing what we've been doing, which is all those things that you previously said.
Yeah, no, and that is a good point, you know, because I never tried to like say that I need to switch up to accommodate somebody else's feelings because of whatever they feel like. So I agree with you on that. Um, which is the reason why I created this show, because I wanted to use my platform in a way where it just gives a kind of a different light to what's going on, you know. And I think the cool thing about this show and how what I can the concept of it is, you know, for those who are watching, the name of the title of the show is the Soul Hour, and I send my guests 3 words, and they have to pick 3 records. And the 3 words are 3 words that are pretty much describing exactly what we are living in right now: life, freedom, and perseverance. Those 3 words they always stick out to me when I think about music that I listen to, because certain music gives me a sense of hope in life. Certain music gets me through the hard times, which I persevere through, and then certain music just makes me feel liberate, you know, to express myself the way I want to express myself freely, you know, which is the word freedom. So Jason actually picked three, when I would say three very different contrasting songs, which I think is dope. The first one that he chose was a Stevie Wonder tune entitled "Love's in Need of Love Today," off of the I think that's off of the Song in the Key of Life, off of that album.
Yeah.
Um, why? What? Tell me about that. Um, tell me about that.
Okay. Well, it's a very easy answer. I think I love Stevie Wonder, so I don't think he's written or at least put out anything that has sounded bad. And uh, to me, he's just like selfishly, um, he is somebody that I want to uh, be like as a musician, because everything that he does is thoughtful,
Hmm.
and like I'm not a person that usually terribly like gets moved by lyrics or that kind of thing. Probably just because I'm a kind of a geeky saxophone player. Um, but uh, this song in particular always kind of hits me because of the way that it starts off from like I mean, it's a amazing composition and the arrangement is amazing. And uh, I'm always interested in trying to pick people's brains just to see like how did he or she come up with the big picture of uh, kind of charting out how to make a song sound the way that they hear it in their head.
Right.
And a tune like this, where there's it's so you can listen to it from a whole bunch of different perspectives, which is to me it reminds me of every time I listen to John Coltrane's Giant Steps, which is like I can listen to that song um, probably 20 times on a loop and find something that is completely different
Hmm.
every single time. That has nothing to do with John Coltrane's solo. Like I can hear stuff that I never really heard Tommy Flanagan playing before, or hear like some unique thing that Paul Chambers played on his bass line, or the interaction between piano and drums. So to me, this particular tune and how it's constructed is beautiful. And also just from like an audio standpoint, it sounds like it actually sounds great. And I can't remember what year it was recorded, but
I think
oftentimes what
75 or 6, somewhere in the mid 70s.
okay. So to have something like that is that old and still we are still talking about it means that there was a lot of time and heart and sincerity put into the crafting of that thing, which doesn't really take place all that much these days. Like, just because music tends to be throwaway music now, where something gets released, you listen to it for maybe a year if you're lucky, but then if you go back to listen to Achy Breaky Heart, now you just listening to the instruments that they are playing, or that is kind of used on that, you think, man, this is why did I bother listening to this? Why did I buy this? Because it's immediately out of date in every level, from the drum track to the bass track to everything. So I always shoot for stuff that I can listen to, that is always going to be timeless. And hopefully these tunes that I selected for you are a good representation of that.
Okay, yeah, that's good, man. Yeah, and that's Stevie always have had that. He's always had that presence of that innate, feeling of everything. He just encompasses everything. Every song that he touches, like, you can feel his spirit running through it. He just knows how to capture it. It's a rarity of musicians that can actually do that and do that well and do it consistently over time. Like, I feel like Prince was one of them cats, man, that like just every time he touched something, he just knew how to figure out what his sound was, which will lead me to my next one. The next song that you picked for Freedom, you chose an interesting group here. Thad Jones and Mel Lewis's no, that's Freedom.
Right. So that's is one of my favorite big band charts that Thad Jones arranged. This is actually a Hank Jones tune, his brother, the great piano player, and he arranged it for a big band, and that became a part of that band's book, and the Vanguard Orchestra still has it and plays it as a part of their book as well. But I always love the title of it. I can't remember the first time I heard it. Actually, now I think I can. I heard it when I was at William Patterson, and the Vanguard Orchestra played at one of the recital hours, I believe. I think that makes sense. Or maybe they did a concert at the school, and this was one of the tunes that they played. And I thought, wow, actually, somewhere I still have the bootleg on cassette tape of them playing this.
Oh,
And
copy of that.
if you have a cassette player, I will give you a copy.
I sure do, sir. I'm old school. I got it. But go ahead, continue.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so that's why, and I think I think the title kind of says it all. But then the particular version that I sent to you as a part of the playlist, it's a version that is just kind of fairly recently been released live in Switzerland. And the thing that blew my mind on this album is that Joe Henderson is in the saxophone section. So for you big band heads, you don't have a whole lot of recordings with Joe Henderson in the actual section
Right.
playing, and on that album he takes some crazy solo. So I will definitely check that out. But then, that aside, going back to the construction of the tune itself, it's a blues, which you can't get any more American than that.
Mm-hmm.
But Hank Jones did something super hip to it. There's an extra maybe 4 or 6 measures to the blues, and I thought that was super hip. And the melody is really hip because of I'm trying to do a quick analysis in my head. I think flute plays the melody with trumpets in harmon mute,
Mm.
1 or 2 trumpets in harmon mute. So that, and it starts off with a march kind of feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually one of those tunes where I listened to it so much that I stole the form of that tune, and I think one of the tunes on my big band album is based off of that form. And yeah, it's just a great tune to check out.
Man, it's funny. Like I was telling you earlier, playing some of that Mel Lewis and Thad Jones music in college was challenging. Because the rhythm section, they had its intricacies there, but for the horn players, I mean, good lord, that's just sheer good writing. Like you have to mechanically know how to function on your instrument just to get through some of them harmonies, and then listen to a lot of music in order to open your ears up enough to conceptualize what it is you playing. Because sometimes you hear some outline and you like, how does this fit? And he's like, oh, it fits perfect. uh, so which takes me to the last song that you picked. And this gentleman is no stranger in the world, not necessarily just the jazz world, but even in classical. I'm speaking about brother man Wynton Marsalis, who oversees over at the Jazz at Lincoln Center. And Wynton came out with this record. I believe, if I quote me, please, anybody correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just kind of going off of my knowledge of remembering history here. I think he won a Grammy off of this record, off the album. Did he not? Was that the one he did in the 90s or 80s when he came out?
I honestly can't remember.
Man,
Um,
if somebody looking at this and y'all could please correct me. I'm pretty sure that he did, but the recording that I'm referring to is the album titled Black Codes. And if you look at the album cover, it's already controversy in its own because he's speaking about the underground railroad, and he has it written in big chalk, white chalk letters on the blackboard, and then it's him, it looked like a little kid, it looked like him, and then his trumpet. And it's when I look at that album cover now, the first time I saw it, I didn't understand it. And I was in when the last time first I think I was a freshman in college when I first seen that album cover. And now me being in my mid 30s and looking at that album cover now, it's heavy. It's heavy. It's heavy when you look at like the meaning, the subliminal meaning, you know, like the education side of knowing who you are and your identity. I really respect that, and I'm pretty sure at that time when Wynton dropped that, and Wynton was young, man, he was at Juilliard, this cat was already playing, and I just remember listening to, I was telling you earlier about the song Delfeo's Dilemma, and I just remember listening to that song, and I'm sitting here thinking, how did Wynton, how did they hear stuff like this? And like that arrange that whole song itself is so complicated to get through, but the song that you chose was the title track, Black Codes, and this is for the word perseverance. So how is this song in correlation to the word perseverance, and what made you select this one particularly?
Um, well, it reminds me of a couple of things. I think of perseverance personally as it relates to Mr. Marsalis in particular, just because of um, I, I think, and I was basically a kid when this album came out, 1985, and I mean, I can't remember what number of album. I mean, he'd already kind of he was out of school by then. I mean,
Yeah.
he was already well established. But um, when this album came out, to me, having heard the previous album, which I think the jazz album, which may have been Think of One, um, the progression from that album to this album, just from a writing standpoint, is like kind of earth shattering. And
Mm-hmm.
then to have um, one of the best bands of all time playing your music is a true luxury that uh, almost doesn't even happen anymore, just because it would be hard to keep those members together um, for any given moment for that length of time. So um, perseverance to me, I think back to just like from uh, my standpoint when Marsalis was kind of, and still is, a hero of mine, just because I see all of the stuff. I'm saying stuff to not say the other word that he has to take, um, uh, which goes way back to late '70s, early '80s, and a lot of it is based on what we were talking about earlier, which is um, you have a young black dude that is taking care of business, and uh, some people don't dig that. But nevertheless, the ability to keep all of that stuff in its proper place and still handle your business from a musical standpoint and from an artistic standpoint uh, in your early 20s, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And I think still today, some of the flack that he gets is largely because of his race, and of course, people will never just outright say it because that's kind of what racists do.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, um, that album kind of shaped my uh, teenage years. It is one of the albums that I thought, oh, oh, this is what is possible. And because he was young, I thought, oh, okay, this is I could see myself doing this. And listening to that music and listening to the interaction between, one of my favorite piano players ever, Kenny Kirkland, and Jeff Watts, and like, even Charnette Moffett, who I believe was,
Yo, he was
17
young.
or 18. Yeah.
He was- oh man. No, yo, let me cut you off for 2 seconds, man.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, when I was in grad school, right? And I wrote my dissertation on the history of I had to pick a bass player from each decade of jazz to present time. That was my question that Leon gave me, right? And I caused such a controversy in my defense because I picked all bass players that people would have obviously picked, and I didn't choose them on purpose. Now I'm going somewhere with this. Like I picked Percy Heath over Oscar Pettiford,
Okay.
because of or I didn't or and in the 50s, I didn't, I chose Paul Chambers, you know what I'm saying? I didn't add Ray Brown in there or Ron Carter, I left them out. I threw Sam Jones in there. I threw Richard Davis in there because to me, Richard Davis is like one of the few bassists that a lot of people don't know that was incredibly classically like this man switched often. He did a whole sonata concert with Gary Carr, who's a fantastic virtuosic classical bassist in the 70s. A lot of people don't remember that, man, like, and when I got to the 80s, my obvious choice on bass would have either been Milt Hinton because of his association, his time with he had with Branford. But I chose Shawnette Moffett because obviously he's the son of what's out there, Ornette,
Mm,
right?
mm.
And you know, when I read the liner notes, the black codes, and did a little research, and I was like, wait a minute, this man was 16 playing bass like that. That's insane. And you got Kenny Kirkland and Tane on, bruh. That is heavy. That's
Yeah.
why that record was successful, bruh. That's heavy. That is like I couldn't believe it. Even when and I defended that in my because that's considered like the neoclassical era of jazz, that the revitalization of jazz, when Wynton kind of made it popular again. And I mean, to have a group like that and you be that young and get that experience.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's I think people even to this day um don't realize how influential that album and honestly that entire band was to not just a genre of music, but like that influenced a lot of young Black jazz musicians to study a music that honestly, if we think about maybe where the music was going before these musicians hit the scene, so like mid 70s, uh, it inspired a whole lot of people to study uh, this art form again. And that album in particular, talking about timelessness again. I listened to that album last week, and I said, well, let me check out this album. Maybe I'll take a listen to like Black Codes, and I'll take a listen to Chambers of Tane. But
Mhm.
then what I found out was like once I started listening to the very first track, which is Black Codes, uh, I said, "Wow, this is super duper killing." So let me just listen to this next album, this next track, and you know, equally beautiful. And so I ended up listening to the whole album in no time, and then I listened to it the very next day again. And again, it goes back to the same thing that we are talking about with Stevie Wonder, and that is like audibly, it sounds great, like it was mixed and mastered really well. But then like the compositions are sincere,
Right.
and even the solos that everyone is playing is not to show anyone up. It's not about even playing X number of notes. It's not like ego driven, I don't think, anyway. And there's always a difference between how Wynton solos compared to how Branford solos compared to how Kenny Kirkland solos. And to me, that is the sign of a great band, is that you have all these different contrasts of people and their style, and their egos aren't getting in the way of the music,
Right.
and it's not a competition. And you know that that kind of gets lost in a lot of um, recordings that you hear today. Um, and so probably that's why I listen to more of stuff back then. So
Right.
that's that's kind of my thought on that.
Well, man, I appreciate the three records that you chose. For everybody that's watching and listening right now, if you go to my YouTube channel, Brandon Robertson Soul Hour YouTube channel, you will find all the previous episodes that I've done recently, as well as the official playlist for the Brandon Robertson Soul Hour show. Every week I update it regularly. So tomorrow I'll be updating um, Jason's selections to the list, as well as this episode. It'll be up by the end of the week, so you'll be able to go on there and you can check it out for those of that weren't able to tune in. Um, I'm trying to see. I don't know if we have any questions or not. I don't see anything popping up. Usually, I like to open it up for questions at the end if anybody who's watching.
I
Oh,
was obviously not interesting enough. I'll
uh,
do better next time.
they still trying to figure it out. Actually, we got a one question. Any projects coming up that you're working on?
What was
Josh,
that? Say that again.
Josh, my man Josh, he's one of your former students, piano player, came out
Oh, okay.
came out of Broward. He had a question for you. He asked, what are any of your future projects that you're working on currently or have coming out?
Uh, man, I don't like to jinx myself with any stuff like that. So what I will say is, the past, just because I've been so busy with my day gig, if you will, and oftentimes my night gig, um, I haven't had time to really do what I I think I'm really, really good at, which is honestly I think I'm a better saxophone player and composer and arranger than I am a teacher. Nevertheless, I'm trying to get myself back into the habit of what I used to do, which is spend more time composing and arranging stuff. So
Cool.
I've started writing tunes the past maybe 3 or 4 weeks just to really physically feel what that used to feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because it's uh, I forgot like how um, that feeling used to be, and now that I have it back like in my system, I kind of dread it because now I don't I don't sleep anymore. Like I keep hearing these tunes like on a loop in my head, and
Right.
um, in years past, what I would do would be I would just wake up and I would go and write this stuff down. But now I have to figure out a better way just because I'm so old and tired. um,
Go
so
through it.
I'm trying to I'm trying to get back into the habit of building my writing chops and my arranging. I think my arranging chops is still decent because I've still done charts here and there for various people, but to write original music,
Mm-hmm.
um, so I'm slowly in the process, without jinxing myself, of working on, I would say, at least two recordings, and we'll see what happens. One will be another big band recording because I already have like a ton of originals and arrangements that I've done, but I just and other people have played and stuff. I just haven't recorded that stuff, and then I have started writing more small group stuff again, which is a different um, mentality, and getting on my horn and writing out or writing them in my head anyway,
Mm-hmm.
um, things that I think would be interesting to play now from a different perspective of um, having moved clear across the country and have been honestly exposed to different styles of music living out here too. So I think that may be something that would be interesting for people to check out. So that's kind of what I'm working on, in addition to just getting back on my saxophone more. So yeah, that's it. Long-winded question.
Now,
Answer.
one more, because I want to make sure I can answer this gentleman. This is a question from Brian. He says, Jason, how does Stevie's music influence your writing and arranging?
Oh, great question. Um, his harmony is in my head. Stevie Wonder is a jazz musician,
Mm-hmm.
so like uh, the way that he constructs songs are simple and complex at the same time, right? So, like to me, I think of it as, um, and this is very weird, but I think of it as his writing, or any great writer, as like if you ever go to like a cartoon and you check out a cartoon where like there's different layers that will interest like the 7-year-old that sees something in that cartoon, and he or she may think that that is funny, but then there's some kind of hidden joke somewhere that the adult sees funny as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's to me what I hear when I check out Stevie Wonder's writing, because the chord movement, and this is, I hate getting very jazz dorky, but the chord movement or the root movement to his songs are really simple, but they, like, the harmony that is placed on top of that root movement is coming totally from a jazz musician's perspective, and you can tell
Mm-hmm.
that he has checked out other jazz musicians in that. I mean, he writes a whole lot of 2/5s, which is not, that's not a common thing in pop music, and he uses a lot of sus chords that resolve in ways that jazz musicians do all the time. And I'm thinking on that album in particular, there's a song, and I can't remember which one it is, but like I remember listening to it over and over again, and there's a like a keyboard solo on it, and I thought, man, like, has Stevie really been like shedding like just like jazz piano? Because I mean, it's a really hip piano solo. And then I finally had to go and do some research, um, and it's Herbie Hancock taking the solo on this Stevie Wonder tune. And my mind was blown because he's actually like comping over Stevie Wonder singing, and then he takes like all these fills that I thought, well, maybe Stevie was transcribing or like really checked out like a lot of like
Yeah.
Herbie from the Headhunters, or from that Chameleon album or whatever, Thrust or whatever. But it's literally Herbie Hancock, and I thought, oh well, yeah, it's off. He knows all the cats, so he's definitely taking everything out, which is what a good musician should be doing, kind of exposing himself or herself to as many different avenues of music that will influence their writing. So he is definitely one that actually I wrote a tune last week that I definitely stole a lot of Stevie Wonder stuff from. So that, hopefully that answers that.
Well, man, I'm just gonna put it out there. If you need a bass player for man, I'm trying to get out there and play more. I'm just putting it out there. I mean, you still my guy. You already know that, but just putting it out there. You know, I'm available.
All right. All right. Cool. Cool.
Uh,
Cool.
I got one more. I guess that one was for me. Do I have any future projects as well? Man, I actually started. I'm gonna let out a secret, and I guess whoever's still watching, y'all will be the only ones that'll catch this in real time. But man, I actually have the second album done. Like in
Oh
terms
wow.
of writing, I've already finished all the songs. I actually completed most of the songs, I guess, in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, because I've had so much time on my hand, and I had started writing new music uh earlier this year. I wrote a nice ballad that I can't, if I tell, it's dedicated to my wife, but I haven't played it for her yet because I'm still trying to tweak it. But I like the harmony of it. I had my friend play it on piano for me. He's like, man, this is killing. I'm like, yeah, Bob Hurst has this ballad, man, that Rodney put me on. I can't remember the name of it, man. Man, it was so, that ballad made me cry, dude. And I was like, man, I wanna, if he can make a grown man cry, listen to this. I know I gotta write something that gotta make the wifey weep a little bit. Um, and I got really inspired when I went to New Orleans for the Gen conference. So I started writing a little more of things that I heard when I was in New Orleans. So I have about 14 tunes already written. It's just that I have no one to play them with because all the musicians team. So iReal has been my best friend and it's getting tiring now. And I'm tired of that click. I'm tired of that. So whenever we get out of this, yeah, I'll start presenting some newer music on the scene. I'm playing with cats now. Um, I got my one gig back at the Bell Room. Shout out to the Bell Room. Steve and Denise, I saw them watching earlier. Shout them out. The Bell Room. Thursday nights down in Fort Myers, downtown Fort Myers. Uh, just gave y'all a plug, so I need that extra bread. Just kidding. uh, but yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm actually I'm working on this in this project, this web show. I really want to continue this. I have some amazing guests coming up. Actually, a few of your colleagues, Mr. Rowe is going to be on the show. I got Carmen
Cool.
going to be on the show.
Awesome.
I'm hoping that I can get the actual group that played with us at the Gen conference on the show, like that particular group. That would be really dope.
Hmm.
Um, and then I got some cats from New York that I'm going to be interviewing in August. So I'm working on the web show, and I'm just trying to I'm just trying to find how to survive through this pandemic, just like everyone else. So, but yeah, man, I want to go ahead and thank you, Jason. You my homie, man. I appreciate you so much for taking your time out of your day to come talk to me and talk to the viewers. I had a lot of people, as I'm looking through the comments, people are saying, it was a great show. Everybody dug the stuff you were talking about. So I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for doing this for me. I really do.
Thanks for having me, man. Anytime.
And for everybody else, I'll be back next week. Next week, I'll be having the incredible my bandmates, my mentors, Dan Miller, trumpet, the legend, the GOAT, Lou Delgado, saxophonist, and my current one of my current homies, my big bro, my ace, who is the former drummer of Ben Vereen, who is the drummer that has been playing with me every Thursday night at the Bell Room. Mr. Tony Vigilante. He is a monstrous drummer. And I'm so fortunate that he lives here because it would have been sad to play with some sad drummers, So they'll be on the show next week, and I hope you guys tune in. Thank you guys for checking out Brandon Robertson Soul Hour. We went over, but that's okay because I had to let my brother get his 2 cents in, and that's what we do. So thank you guys very much. Y'all have yourselves a good evening. Stay safe. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Follow the CDC guidelines and all that good stuff. And don't be out here acting reckless. And peace, love, and happiness. All right. Have a good evening, everyone.